morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is 8:30, and I hope you have now joined us this morning on a very sad and disturbing day. In the early hours of this morning, around 2 a.m. Berlin time, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a, quote, special military operation to, quote, demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. Since then, there have been reports of major explosions all across Ukraine, including in bigger cities like Odessa, Mariupol, Kharkiv, and the capital, Kyiv. These are likely the result of cruise missiles, artillery, and air attacks aimed at incapacitating Ukraine's defenses. There are also reports of attacks on border posts, of columns of tanks crossing into Ukraine territory from the Belarusian border, and also of landing operations by the Russian fleet in the Black Sea. This morning's events follow Putin's recognition of the two separatist so-called People's Republics of Donetsk and Luhansk on Monday, and the authorization by the Duma of military operations abroad. Until then, Putin and his government had engaged in what now looks like pretend diplomacy, the latest of which included Chancellor Olaf Scholz visiting Moscow on Tuesday last week, and French President Emmanuel Macron last weekend trying to broker a last-minute US-Russia summit, which the Kremlin then denied. The Americans, the Europeans, including the British, the Japanese and others have reacted to Putin's move on Donbass by imposing first sanctions, and we will see very likely now many more sort of serious ones ahead, with a special meeting of the European Council scheduled, I think, for tomorrow anyway. That might even be brought forward. And we are probably now seeing the catastrophe Chancellor Scholz warned against on Monday unfolding. To discuss this, we have this morning with us Dr. Stefan Meister, head of the International Order and Democracy Program at the German Council on Foreign Relations. He is Germany's leading expert on Russia and the post-Soviet space, whose views and advice are widely sought, including by Chancellor Scholz before his visit to Moscow. Stefan joins us from Paris. Good morning, Stefan. We will also be hearing from Dr. András Rácz, a senior fellow in the Security and Defense Program here at the German Council on Foreign Relations. He's a great expert on the Russian military, and who will give us a sort of ad hoc status report on what is presently happening and his assessment of what will likely to follow next. Good morning, András.
Good morning.
And last but not least, we'll have Alena Epifanova, a research fellow in the International Order and Democracy Program, an expert on the Russian IT sector in particular, whose latest DGAP paper on Russia's quest for digital sovereignty I highly recommend. You'll find it on the DGAP website. Alena will speak to Russia's economy and how far it is prepared or unprepared for sanctions, with a special focus on the IT sector. And now, without any further ado, let's go to Stefan Meister for his general take. Where are we at this morning, Stefan? And did you expect this full-scale invasion, which the Americans have warned us for weeks, but especially in Europe, we somehow didn't really believe in them?
I think we also didn't want to believe in it. And I have to say, I think we're just waking up in a new world. This is my impression. I think war is really back to Europe, and this is a large-scale attack on Ukraine. So it's not only about Donbass or parts of the Donbass, but this is really getting Ukraine militarily under control. We were just, my colleague Milan Nitsch and I were just discussing yesterday in the French Foreign Office about options, and I think all this is history, and I think I'm also personally shocked about that it's happened, even if I think since Monday we somehow expected that this is now a major shift in Russia's policy. I think that is really important. We could see on Monday that with the recognition of the so-called republics LNR and DNR, there was a major shift also on the Russian policy on on Ukraine, on Donbass. So federalization was over, and it was about recognition and creating a pretext for war. When Putin used several times the word genocide, but also fascists, Nazis, I think this justifies every Russian action also towards Ukraine in front of the Russian public in a way. So I think this is his thinking, but I think he has also created very typically for this Russian regime a legalistic background for attacking Ukraine. You can justify, you can criticize this, but I think that's also part of it. I think my impression is from his speech on Monday, from the Security Council meeting, from his speech this morning. I think he's on a historical mission. He's really living in a different world. The way how he perceives Ukraine and what he wants to do, so to clean Ukraine from Nazis. So I'm using here his own words. I think that's somehow out of the world, but I think this is even more dangerous. Yeah, because what cost-benefit calculation is this based? What is the rationale of this attack? And I think it's something which is out of our own imagination. Yeah, I think this is very, very dangerous. He does not understand Ukraine, but he does not care also in the end about Ukraine in a way that he thinks about society or dynamics in Ukraine. And I think the second part for me, and I think that makes also his speech again visible, is about the West. Ukraine as a proxy of the West, yeah, and attacking the West in Ukraine. So the West means US and NATO. I think even this is out of reality, yeah, because it's neither NATO nor the US was provoking Russia or was trying to enter Russia. But I think this assessment of being under pressure from the US, I think, is part of the understanding of Russian elites. Maybe one word on sanctions. I think, and Alena will speak later about this. I think sanctions will not prevent to stop him. As I said, I think he's somehow on a historical mission. He has a different cost-benefit calculation, and I think they are prepared. They just prepared for any kind of sanctions, and this is something we really have seriously to discuss. Is it important to react? I think we need really tough reactions. We didn't learn our lessons in 2008 and 2014. I think we refused also realities, and I speak here also about Germany, but not only about Germany. We refused realities of Russian policy in the past years, especially since 2014. Experts have advised also decision makers on that this is a new reality, this is a new game in which we are, and we need to prepare ourselves. And sorry for also criticizing the German government to sell a strategic infrastructure in 2015 to Gazprom, like gas storages, to be more dependent on Russian gas, to have all this stupid discussion about Nord Stream 2. I think now it looks, I don't know, like a joke is maybe the wrong word, but it looks so also for me out of the world. Yeah. And I think this is nothing. So on one hand, it's coming by a surprise, but on the other hand, it's nothing which comes by a surprise. I think this is a regime which has changed fundamentally since 2012. It has built up enemy legitimization through enemy NATO and US, and Putin has warned several times also the US, NATO, yeah, and the West what he will do. And I think we were not willing to leave our comfort zone, and we were discussing in a mindset which was already history. Yeah, and I think now Russia is just creating the realities, and I think it needs a fundamental shift in our perception of what this regime is willing to do and is already doing. it needs really building up also resources and toolboxes also to react to this. I think we really need now and short term and middle term to react to this situation. And I think that's really, how to say it, I think that's really dangerous also in terms of that nuclear weapons are part of Russia's foreign and security strategy. So it can also happen with blackmailing, using nuclear weapons to prevent any counter reaction. And I think we have here security elites in Russia which took over politics. We have a securitization of any part of Russian politics. There's a security logic also in all this. And I think there is no corrective for Putin anymore, no internal corrective for Putin. There's no public who will correct him. There are no decision makers, no liberals or whatever who will correct him. Yeah. So, and I think that's something which has emerged in the past years. And I think we have talked about it. We have analyzed it. Yeah. We have warned about it. But I think only when it happens, then we are hopefully ready to react in an appropriate way. Yeah, and as I said, I think now it's really, how to say it, we are really in a different stage of reality, history, and let's recognize this also. So maybe I stop here, Henning, and you can ask further questions, and we have also other speakers also looking on the military situation.
Of course, maybe one quick sort of a question from me. When we saw this sort of this choreography of unfolding events on Monday, when Vladimir Putin had his sort of national security advisors, head of foreign intelligence and so on, called into a huge room in the Kremlin, and this was supposed to be a live broadcast, which it wasn't. And he sort of humiliated a number of his closest advisors. And we could, or one could have the impression that many of those who are close to Putin are not very comfortable with the course Putin has chosen now. Do you see there's any chance of some sort of a palace coup or sort of his sort of immediate people turning against him, or is that in this sort of Putin system, Putin regime as it is unthinkable?
I think what we saw on Monday and what we also saw yesterday or this morning, I think is angry Putin. He's very emotional. He's very angry about the West and the lack of responsiveness, and that he was already talking in Munich about it, and nobody reacted to his concerns and his assessments. I think what we saw on Monday was also that people were really not comfortable with Putin's decision. I think they already made this decision, and people reacted also. They were even in this event, which was somehow orchestrated, not comfortable with the whole situation. I had even the impression that they also don't have contact with Putin. They hadn't prepared this meeting well. He was not talking with them about it. And my impression is that there are people who really were warning him. So this is my reading. I don't know. Yeah, this is Kremlin astrology, but from looking into this event, how it happened on Monday, I think people were really not happy with this decision. They're really afraid of this decision. They really tried maybe even to prevent him to go here further. But the whole system is functioning in a different way. I think the correctives in the system, they just not there anymore, or they have no say. And you saw it also with the liberals in the system, also in the think tanks scenery, how they were warning, how they were writing about this. I think that this is a very much a military logic, or a security, no, not military, I think it's the intelligence logic in which we are here. And I can even imagine that the militaries also warn about this war more than the intelligence people. But I think especially security intelligence people, they also like to go into this conflict. It increases their role in the system. They can attack also more the liberals, throw out the liberals out of the system. And there is a kind of a dynamic now which is going on, which is not to stop. So I don't think that the last revolt would happen. I think Putin is the core decision maker. Everybody is vulnerable in this system, and he will now go through all this and is on his mission. And I just don't see the people, the persons who could stop him in the system.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Let's now go to András for a sort of status report. What do you see, and sort of what is your interpretation of what is unfolding right now?
So, in short, I fully agree with Stefan. This is a full-scale invasion with the objective of occupying large parts of Ukraine's territory, period. So this is not a limited scenario. This is not some kind of a pressure game. This is a full-scale invasion. Starting from early morning today, Russian forces entered Ukraine from 6 directions. Here I'm trying to share a map. So the 6 directions coming from Lugansk, that's one, see the mouse. The second direction is Belgorod, Kharkiv. The third direction is Kursk, Sumy, this way. The fourth direction is from the north against Chernihiv. The fifth direction is from the Crimea, heading right now towards Kherson, with the supposed objective of liberating or actually capturing the North Crimea channel, so thereby solving the Crimea's water supply problem. And the sixth direction, a major strike, is from Belarus towards across the Zhytomyr region, this way, heading supposedly towards Kiev. They seem to be using everything what they have. The attack started with 2-3 hours of well-targeted missile strikes and long-range artillery strikes. They are using Iskanders, they are using Kalibr missiles, they are using basically everything what they have. Shortly thereafter, when the sun started to rise, land forces also crossed the demarcation line in Donetsk and Luhansk, supported by intensive artillery fire. The interesting element is in the other directions, there have not been much of an artillery fire preparation. Instead, they just simply sent in the tanks almost immediately. Looks like kind of a modernized version of a blitzkrieg. The first targets were almost exclusively military targets. Elements of command and control, ammunition depots, and most importantly, airports and air defense facilities, radar stations, missile stations, all these things. The objective is to destroy Ukraine's air defense and air force in order to clear the way for Russia's tactical air force as well as attack helicopters to come in and clear and support the advance of Russian forces. Something kind of unexpected and bad news, Belarus is a full-scale party in this war, period. Russian forces have been firing from Belarusian territory. Belarusian army has been providing the Russians with logistical support, and there are unconfirmed reports of even Belarusian soldiers crossing the border. Even if this one would not be confirmed, the first two still makes Belarus as an integral part of this war on the side of Russia. Good news, if there are any, so far, internet seems to be functioning in Ukraine. The Ukrainian government still exists. Ministers are alive. Zelensky is alive. Government leaders are able to communicate. So far, the very functionality of the Ukrainian government has not ceased to exist. Bad news, panic is starting. Now with the daylight in full force, we will see probably deep incursions or attempted deep incursions by Russian tank and mechanized formations through all the directions. My uninformed guess is that due to the overwhelming superiority of Russian forces, both in terms of numbers, in terms of technology, as well as in terms of tactical and operational experiences, it's unlikely that Ukraine would try any kind of rugged, rigid defense. Instead, Ukraine would try to outmaneuver the Russian formations, and if that doesn't work, defense would need to concentrate on the cities. Because in cities and urban settlements, the technological and numerical superiority of the adversary is is less of an advantage than in the open field. There is already confirmed geolocated information, here I'm showing it again on the map, that Russian mechanized formations have already reached the outskirts of Kharkiv. They seem to be stopping there, at least this was the case 15 minutes ago, probably waiting for further reinforcements. This is where we are at the moment. All in all, again, a full-scale invasion, and they are also preparing for occupying territories. This we know because there are not only Russian military units present or were lined up along the border, but also Rosgvardia, so Russian National Guard forces, which Russia is using for internal policing duties. It's kind of a paramilitary formation. And Rosgvardia is also trained and exercised occupational duties or pacification duties. So after the advancing first-line forces, Rosgvardia will come in and do what US military terminology calls the mop up. At least this seems to be the Russian plan. That's it from me for the start.
And now let's go to Alena for a quick take on how Russia's economy is prepared or unprepared for sanctions. We've seen a sort of first round, which was mostly sort of financial. Nord Stream 2 was cancelled, of course, which sort of until yesterday or until this morning sounded like a big deal. Stefan has already sort of alluded to it. Now looks like a well, that's probably not the last word on it. Alena, please, for your assessment.
Yeah, thank you, Henning. I'm not an expert in Russian economy, but I mean, I look at the technologies which are, of course, tightly connected to Russia's economy, people, and also a capability to act of the country. And as Stefan already said, for me, it also looked like Russia is in the conflict with the West and with the US, especially. And if we look at the years since 2014, we see that Russia has actively prepared for such a confrontation with the West. And in the economy, it built up what economists call Fortress Russia. It means like, so according to the strategy, Russia built massive reserves, and for now, it's an all-time high. So the Central Bank of Russia reserves have increased more than 70% since late 2015, and now they have about $630 billion in reserves. And this money were not spent during the pandemic, so to support the economy and Russian business. So it was a rainy day. It wasn't a rainy day for the government. And the economists suggest that, this is exactly the possibility to sustain heavy sanctions for Russia. So in case it will be introduced, and we see it's very likely that very hard economic sanctions will be introduced. Also, since 2015, Russia has ramped up its foreign currency reserves and sought to start de-dollarization its economy. So it sought a way how to be less dependent on US economic mechanism. And it also moved away its reserves holding in US and European jurisdictions. So it tries to protect possible targets from US and European institutions. So the government debt is equivalent about 30% of GDP, and this is one of the lowest in the world. And it's also what Vladimir Putin has done during 20 years. So he worked hardly on reducing the government debt and achieved significant results in that. And the Kremlin also wanted to build kind of Fortress Russia in the digital domain, and also since 2013, so it proclaimed independence from foreign technologies and also introduced IT import substitutions. But I have to say it hasn't achieved much results in this domain. I'm sorry. And what we found out in our studies, and also if you look deeper into Russia's economy, into Russia's technologies, you see that Russia remains hugely dependent on Western and especially on US technologies. And also listening to Mr. Putin today in the morning, I also understood that what also Stefan already said, that he lost the reality when he said that so Russia can sustain any sanctions. So we are well prepared, we are good. The US sanctions won't work that hard for Russia. And again, if you look at the technologies and if you look how they work for Russian people and for the Russian economy, you see that technological sanctions will be a massive blow for Russia. So the countries practically rely in every single sector of the digital domain, if it comes to hardware, if it comes to software, if it comes to open source software. So it's all about relying on Western technologies and especially on US technologies. And these concern not only products from US companies directly, like such big companies as Cisco, Intel, or Google, and devices, but also devices manufactured with US technologies. For example, Russia has its own processor, Baikal, and it's very proud about it. But if you look at the details, you see that this processor is based on ARM architecture, which is a British semiconductor company. And it also it's microchips produced in Taiwan. And Taiwan, in his turn, is also dependent on US technologies. And if you look at every single corner, operating system, it's about US technologies. It's about cloud computing, it's US technologies. And we're talking about like very basis for Russian people, but also for Russian economy. And and also if we look in the future, what Vladimir Putin doesn't like to do, we see that such technology as 5G, so Russia has no own solutions to do it. So it cooperates with Nokia, with Ericsson, partly with Huawei, but practically it can't do its own 5G network. So actually the West, and especially the US, has a huge leverage over Russia. And a technological blockade can hit both the consumer market and the companies that produce equipment for commercial and government needs. And so specialists in technologies and economy in Russia says that the worst option will be the introduction of two-stage sanctions. It means the supply of both products from US companies, such as Intel, Nvidia, Cisco, and so on, but also equipment manufactured using American technologies. So if they will be banned, so it will be a huge blow for Russia. So it practically would mean a full stop for Russian economy. And concrete, it could mean that, as far as I know, now it's under discussion in the Biden administration, but also US Department of Commerce is discussing this possibility, is a very powerful tool of the United States, it's so-called foreign direct product rule. This rule has a very unique degree of extraterritorial application. So it means even if a product, let's say hardware or software, is made outside of the United States by a foreign company, the US can still reach if it produced from US origin technology. Such an instrument has been already applied towards Chinese company Huawei, and we saw a lot of troubles for the company to produce their products, also smartphones, and also Russia experienced shortages of the supply of Huawei in Russia. So and as far as I know, so the last discussion was it would be kind of nuclear option, or it would be like a very, very worst case scenario. But how we see it today in the morning, so we are already in this worst case scenario, and I think we can expect introducing of such sanctions in case of Russia. I stop here.
Thank you very much, Alena. Maybe one quick question. I mean, we are now seemingly approaching a situation which is a little bit like the Cold War, and sort of how long would Russia be able to sustain this kind of cutoff from the rest in economic terms? From what you say, one has the impression that especially in the IT sector and innovation, that sort of it will be quickly felt, these kind of sanctions.
Yes, this is the high likely possibility that so it depends again on the United States, what kind of technologies, what kind of areas they would like to hit. But for now, it seems like they could choose wherever they want, because in many areas, Russia relies on either directly on US technologies or on technologies which are produced on technologies based on the US. So for the economy, it would be very difficult to switch to another technology. So there are not so many solutions in Russia. So then this is the question for China. So how China will behave in this situation, what kind of conditions it could put towards Russia. But also in this case, China does not have all the solution which Russia will need. And at the same time, as I already mentioned, Chinese Huawei was hit by US sanctions. It means like Russia could have very severe spillover effects if the US administration or US will hit also Chinese companies. So it means Russia is not secure also in this case. And for now, it doesn't have that much room for maneuver. So if it comes to technological sanctions, and I think it will come to such sanctions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Another maybe very, very minor point is, of course, everything is more complicated. Also in this case, it's already very complicated. But of course, Russia could use also its own leverage in special metals for producing microchips. For example, Russia and Ukraine, they're the leaders in providing number of metals that are used in production of semiconductors, for example, neon and palladium. So, and again, also in this case, the US have to consider what would it mean if Russia will try to introduce such a ban for such metals which are very, very needed for production of semiconductors.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's high time to open up and to involve our audience as well. Excellent questions all. I think we give it first to András and then Alena and Stefan.
Thank you for the questions and interest. I try to answer in the order of questions. How high-tech is this war? In the initial strikes, Russia has employed all the precision-guided munitions that it has. However, these stockpiles are limited. They do not have more than a few hundred caliber missiles altogether. The same is true with other precision-guided missiles. So the anti-radar missiles and all these. So these precision weapons are going to run out of stock quite fast. It's already documented that they are using just normal MLRS, multiple launch rocket system missiles, also against cities. So in terms of high tech, they do have precision weapons, but not that many, and they are already employing the non-precision ones too. And when it comes to cyber attacks, Ukraine has experienced a series of cyber attacks both last week and an even more serious wave of attacks starting yesterday early morning. However, so far it seems to be that these cyber attacks, though they caused, of course, inconvenience, they didn't seem to be able to disrupt Ukraine's internet communication or the government's functioning. This, of course, doesn't say that there will be no more cyber attacks, but the good point here that Ukraine in the recent years has grown remarkably resilient to cyber threats. They've been attacked a lot of times, they learned a lot. I'm not a cyber expert. My guess is that intensive cyber warfare is going on right now in the cyberspace as well. How does it differ from the attack in 2014? In all the aspects. In 2014, the troops that really moved in the Crimea were largely special operation forces, marine infantry, and a few mechanized units, while large chunks of the Russian army played only a deterrent role. This is different. Now Russians are using everything that they have. All the 11 combined arms armies of Russia are lined up along Ukraine's borders and are put in action. Once perhaps similarity to 2014, Russia started the strikes from Russian soil. So they are happily firing across the border, which makes it very hard for Ukraine to launch any kind of a counterstrike. Russia apparently sees no limitation here. When it comes to tactics, This is combined arms operation. Ground forces, air forces, special operations, missile forces, everything. So far, it's quite hard to judge the exact efficiency of the attack, as we have very limited information from the front line, apart from a few occasional videos. Ukrainian forces are suffering losses and are retreating, but the extent is yet hard to decide or hard to fathom. That's hard to measure. On Kuleba's list on what Ukraine needs, they need everything. And Russians are already attacking ammunition depots in Ukraine. Ukrainian army might soon suffer from the shortage of artillery shells as well as small arms ammunition. So any kind of assistance in the field of military equipment, ammunition, and also civilian assistance, they will need. Short question on the refugees. As I'm now reporting from Budapest, I know for a fact that the Hungarian government is preparing for a refugee wave at Hungarian border, going as high as 600,000 people. So this is the ceiling of the preparation level. Hungary at present is prepared to take care of approximately half of this number, significant already. We know that panic is already starting, both in Kiev, Kharkiv, Chernihiv, and all the affected cities. And what's happened, and the predictable is happening. People try to run away by cars, which result in massive traffic jams. So everybody gets stuck on the road. This will have serious humanitarian implications, even if the Russian forces don't reach them, but they will. All in all, it looks bad.
One very quick question. Many military experts told me earlier that the forces assembled wouldn't be enough for a full-term occupation. Do you see that as well? Sort of would we need to for occupation of Ukraine need additional forces than the ones already in the theater?
The calculus is, let's say trust, say that the currently amassed Russian forces, which are about around 200,000, plus we need to add the Belarusian military to a certain extent. We need to add the Rosgvardia, so the National Guard and various paramilitary formations. These numbers could surely be enough to occupy Ukraine east of River Dnieper. When it comes to the Western territories, that doesn't seem to be the objective right now. And also from the political perspective and military perspective, occupying Western Ukraine would be much more complicated when it comes to the local resistance than Eastern Ukraine. But again, it's yet a bit too early to judge how intensive local resistance is going to be. In short, eastern part of Ukraine, so east of River Dnieper, for sure.
All right, thank you very much. Alena, please.
I think András excellently answered the question about cyber operations. I completely agree with him and his assessment. When it comes to Milan's question, yeah, you are right. I mean, also in these terms, so the Kremlin has been in conflict not only with the West, but also with its own society. Mr. Putin is in conflict with its own society. And so what they also did, like systematically did during the last years, they have switched off critical voices and independent media. So we observed a lot of pressure on the independent media, not only on the federal level or like big media houses, but also on the regional level. So they have did a lot to prevent any possibility to report independently on what's going on in Russia and in Ukraine, and also to prevent any kind of serious protests. And also, we're not talking about the legislation what have been introduced to prevent protests and also to deal with people who are against the regime. What I have seen on the Russian internet today, of course, I'm somehow happy to be in the nice intelligentsia bubble and liberal voices, which of course very ashamed of their situation, what's going on, and which are against the war and not thinking what they can do, and to organize kind of protest on to support Ukrainians and so on. But also that sociologist says that the society in general is very tired. And this is what we see now in difference to what 2014, that the regime does not use mobilization of the population, but rather use the tiredness of the people who are tired of the foreign policy, who are tired of everything, of the pandemic, economic stagnations, and so on. And they play with that, and they know that people actually won't do a lot of protest, won't do any resistance. What is the assessment of sociologists?
Many thanks. And maybe now to Stefan, and there was an additional question in the chat, sort of maybe what do you see sort of Berlin's next moves, and what does solidarity mean, which sort of a word which Chancellor Scholz, but also Annalena Baerbock, our foreign minister, are using quite frequently. How far do you think could this now probably inevitable change in Berlin's approach to Russia, how far could it go? Could it also include weapons deliveries to Ukraine?
One sentence just to frame it again on Ukraine society. I think it's about apathy. Yeah, so it's really about Ukraine-Russian society. I think it's really about decoupling also of the regime from its own society and fighting its own war. Which has nothing to do with most of the Russians. Yeah, so I just wanted to add this. So let maybe a bit more on a larger scale. I think for me this is about destroying the Ukrainian state, the very functioning of Ukraine as a state, as Putin also has said this several times, that Ukraine is no state, and now he had learned that Ukraine is a functioning state, and now he creates a not dysfunctional Ukrainian state. I think that is his main aim. And if you ask what we should supply, I think András already said this, everything. So this is about the survival of the Ukrainian state, how to keep Ukraine as a functioning state. And this is about humanitarian aid, but this is also about everything else in terms of communication, in terms of transport, in terms of helping people. I don't know. And we need a different discussion about weapons supply. Yeah, so I think this is also about how to say, this is not only about Ukraine. Yeah, we had this very strange discussion. Is it about Ukraine or is it about European security? Ukraine is European security. Yeah, this is, if you're looking, I was chatting with colleagues from Georgia and Armenia and other post-Soviet countries this morning. I think everything is now on the table. Yeah, so this is at the moment about Ukraine, but again, Putin is here. I think is on his mission, yeah, and he wants to bring back what he thought that he lost, and he wants to bring it under control. So this might be also about Georgia. This might also about Moldova and other post-Soviet countries. And I think we should have this in mind, yeah. And if we talk about the migration wave, I think every neighbor will have to take migrants. It's about Western Ukraine. More people will coming into it, but it's also about Romania, it's Hungary, it's Poland, Baltic states, and yeah, maybe also about Germany. Yeah, so we as I said, we were sitting in the comfort zone, but I think that's not anymore the case. So how to react? I think there was this question: no deployment of troops, sanctions will not impress, and also our dependency on Russian gas. Don't forget this. Yeah. So I think we cannot. So I think there is a leverage also of Russia on us, and I think that's also on the table. As Alena said, this regime has prepared for any kind of sanctions. That means they are also willing to do counter sanctions, to go in this bargaining, to use their leverage. Yeah, and I think they have a strong leverage, especially on Germany, with the gas supply, with the storages and everything. And they have prepared this, yeah, with low levels. So I think that's the question: how far we are willing to go, what price we are willing to pay, how our government has prepared also for such a situation. I'm not so sure, to be honest. Yeah, okay, we have a sanctions list, but I think there's a lot of solidarity talk, but what it concrete means, I don't know, to be honest. So if you talk with our stakeholders, I don't know. Yeah, so everything seems to be clear, but I think what we have learned in the past years, there's a lack of action, there's a lack of preparation, and there's no mindset. for dealing with such a large-scale crisis. Yeah, and I think that's the problem. I think Putin knows this also, that that he has his experiences also how we are reacting to other provocations and other wars. So, and then there's the final question about, I think I already said this, it's not, so maybe it's not only about Ukraine, it could be about Eastern Europe, but I think it's much more at the moment about post-Soviet countries. So it's Georgia, it's other countries. I think NATO still works, yeah. So, but sure, I think Baltic states, Poland, I think, yeah, maybe András also can say something on this.
Your quick response, and then I have two more questions I would like to squeeze in.
Just a response or a thing to add on what to do. We need to be careful about very intensive information operations going on. And there have been extreme amount of fakes coming in. Odessa occupied, Mariupol occupied, Kharkiv fallen without fighting, all false. So one of the best things we can do is not to spread unchecked and unverified information, because panic can be as destructive as military strikes. So it applies for all of us, expert community. We need to be conscious about the threat of information warfare from the other side. That's my short remark.
Wilfried Jilge, please, one of Germany's leading experts on Ukraine and also associated to the DGAP.
Yes, thank you, Henning. Hello, Stefan. Hello, all you together. Yes, I very would like again to underline that's very important what András said. Everything depends now from the first hours and days. And I heard just, for example, and that also confirms András' opinion, Ukraine could at least last time respond to the attacks on Mariupol. I just telephoned with Mariupol's administration. The situation is still under control. It is not the case that they are threatening to fall at the moment. We have also a non-successful landing operation to Odessa that could be also pushed back. But of course, I think what is very, very concerning is the Belarus frontier, because Senkivka, Chernivtska region, they now made a breakthrough. However, what would be very important now, and that is my question to András. András, I also heard that we have many sabotage explosions in Ivano-Frankivsk and other Western Ukraine cities. It is so important now for German Bundesregierung and all Western partners to organize corridors through Western Ukraine to the central Ukraine in order to bring at least, and that could Germany do, civil military infrastructure, bulldozers, ponton bridges. All these things are very needed. So can you say, András, how is the situation in the Western regions? Thank you.
So far, Russians are targeting military infrastructure. Usually they use infiltrating special operation forces which direct the airstrikes if missiles are not enough. It's documented that Ukraine has lost at least 2 ammunition depots and the military infrastructure is already getting damaged. This is, however, only the beginning. Once the air defense is disabled, then would start the flow of Russian attack helicopters, and that's a devastating thing. So the real destruction is just going to start. I mean, what we are seeing now, it is only the beginning. The preparatory strikes aimed at disabling Ukraine's air defense system and air force. Once the sky is clear, much worse is going to come. And at this point, I fully support Wilfried's idea. The corridor might help both the Ukrainian population and also the Ukrainian state to preserve its functionality. It's questionable whether Russians would dare or risk attacking a Western corridor. At least it would slow them down.
Thank you very much. We are almost at the end. We've got 2 minutes left. And I wanted to ask you all, you 3 panelists, please. Sort of, I know it's an impossible question now, and it's very hard to think ahead, but maybe you can give us just a little sense on where you think how this will end, or sort of, or what is the next big moment where there is time to reconsider, or is that sort of, is that the wrong question, and will this go on and on and on? Maybe Alena first, then Stefan and András.
Well, this is of course a very difficult question, but I think so. The war will continue as far as Russia can come further into Ukraine. Again, I'm not a military expert, but what András just described, it seems like they are serious about using every possible military means that they have. I think now it's very much depend, of course, what the US will suggest how to react, and it seems like the West is at least now united in its response, and it will be a very hard response. But again, Mr. Putin doesn't think in economical terms, so we can't stop the war anymore. And I think so. At least it's possible that Russia economy will be damaged, and maybe be somehow wake up for Mr. Putin. But I'm not sure that it will end well for Ukraine and for Russia. So unfortunately, no positive estimations.
Stefan.
No, I think we need completely different assessment. A completely different debate about where we are now. Yeah, so this is also about the whole weapons supply discussion and these kind of things. I think needs a completely different assessment now, because this is about whole Ukraine. Yeah, this can also go to, or will go to Kiev. Yeah, so this is not just taking a little piece of Ukraine, but as also András and I think Wilfried were also saying, this is Russia is putting everything what it has into this war. Yeah, and it will react to how we react, even if it's if it's quite resilient against economic sanctions. But that means we need a much broader toolbox. We need a completely different discussion also about civil supply, military supply, deterrence, these kind of things. Again, we are in a new reality. Yeah. So, and I hope we were waking up in one point. Yeah. So, and so it's about not only the survival of the Ukrainian state, but it goes beyond Ukraine, and it goes also about our security. Yeah.
Thank you, András. Last word.
Yep. What we know about Russian decision making. Once a military operation starts, from then on, military logic dominates. There is no sanction that could stop an ongoing military operation. However, we can increase the costs of this military operation, particularly the costs for the Russian elites. So my suggestion here is put aside political correctness and hit them where it hurts, and hit them with everything what we have. Assets freezes, confiscations, arrests, blocking of Schengen visas, expelling their diplomats, everything what we have. Because the objective is to make people in the Russian elite, in Putin's close circles, understand that perhaps the moment has slowly come when Vladimir Vladimirovich is already part of the problem, but not the solution. That's the only chance to stop the invasion.
Time's up. I hope you learned as much as I did, and I'm sure the German Council on Foreign Relations will continue to follow this very closely, and we'll keep you posted on our assessments of what's happening and what will be happening next. So please join me in thanking our panelists, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon again here at the German Council on Foreign Relations. Have a very good day, even though there's not much sign that it sort of could become much better, at least in the near future. Thank you all very much.